Welcome everybody to the 7th edition of TimeXtender Tuesdays. Today is June 8th, 2021, and we're super excited to show you how to build a data warehouse in just 15 minutes with TimeXtender. Our presenter today is Taylor Hagan, one of our talented solutions specialists. So without further ado, take it away, Taylor.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. I'm really excited. This is my first TimeXtender Tuesday that I have hosted. So when we talk about TimeXtender, a lot of what we have been focused on is building that architecture. Today, we're kind of flipping that around. We're really looking at how does a solution work once it's built, right? There are kind of basically three elements to TimeXtender: the ODX, the MDW, and the semantic models. Now, each of these serve a different purpose. For today, I'll be focused on an on-prem solution. But again, TimeXtender is very flexible. You can do a hybrid or totally on-prem or fully cloud implementation without doing a whole bunch of work. Now, in addition to that, we'll look at managed execution. I'll be bumping up the number of threads to parallelize my execution, make it a little bit faster. We'll look at data lineage and documentation as well. So just to break it down really explicitly before we put the timer on, I'm going to take a SQL data source, run it through my ODX, create that data model for 3 different dimensions, create that data mart, and then pull in just a couple basic things into Power BI. All right, so let's show, I've got nothing up my sleeves here. We can see a blank Power BI dashboard. I haven't saved this. I don't have any data loaded. Okay, nothing up my sleeves. I will switch over to TimeXtender. I've got this ODX configured with 2 data sources. I'm not going to use either one though, right? I'm going to pull in that brand new data source. All right, last but not least, let's pull that timer on, get ready to go. Okay, here we go. All right, so very first thing we're going to do is create a new project. Simple enough. I'm going to name this Lightning Demo. All right. Okay, and let's go ahead and bring in that data source that I mentioned. I will be using the AdventureWorks 2014. That's already loaded here in my SQL Server on-prem, but this could easily be in Azure SQL DB or Data Lake, really any of these ODX data sources. Great. And I'm not going to talk about the 200 plus data sources right now. I'm just going to skip right to the SQL one. And there'll be a bunch of tables in here that I'm going to pull in, but we only need a few of them. Let's go ahead and name this data source. This is actually running locally, so this will be my PC. I don't need a lot of authentication, and then let's pull down that catalog. 2014, great. Like I said, all the tables, and we'll do a transfer task. So if you're not familiar, orchestration is one of the big strengths of TimeXtender. Here I'm just going to name this transfer. But what I could do is actually create a schedule for this to be refreshed. Obviously, I'm not going to do that right now, but that would make it really simple. All right, so it's already synchronized. I'm going to execute. That's going to move that data in. Let's go ahead and create our data warehouse. While that's running, so MDW, again, this is just local C, and I'm going to create that database for my MDW right now. So let's call this MDW and just the date today, 2021-06-08. The only thing I'm going to change here is direct read, and we'll go ahead and create that. This connection, we're all set. Great, let's do a time check. All right, just under 2 minutes, we're doing fine. All right, so that data has loaded successfully into the ODX. And so let's go ahead and close this. I'm going to pull the data integration side of the ODX open. So if I just search in this AW data source, we can see a ton of tables. I don't have time to search through all these. Now, again, I'm going to build up 3 different dimensions. 1, product, 2, customer, and 3, that sales transactions. This will be really at the center of my star schema. And if I flip back, we can think about what that's going to look like. Everything's going to be revolving around the sales orders, the sales transactions. That will play really nicely when I move from my MDW over to my data mart, because when I integrate that into Power BI, I'm not going to do any modeling. It's already related. All right, great. Talking too much. All right, let's bring in product stuff. Okay, so product. That's good. All right, and let's bring in product model 2. Let's just be a little specific. So when I think about what my dashboard is going to look like, let's just focus on two simple criteria because I'm going to be pressed for time. One will be sales amount and the other will be full name of the customer. So I'll need to get some of that customer information next. Let's start at the people, person. All right, so person.person, this is going to have the name information that I need to build that up. I can see first name, middle name, last name, great. But I need a way to integrate that with that sales orders. So let's actually switch over to the sales scheme. Okay, sales.customer, great. And you can see I'm just doing drag and drop here. This is why I'm able to go so fast. This is why we're able to do that 2-day POC with such a high success rate, right? Because everybody's able to see us do this over that 2-day period. Bringing in some sales transactions, sales dimension, great. All right, we are done with that data pulled in from AW. I am going to create one other table. I don't know if you know this, but in TimeXtender, it's actually really easy to do. This is tough the old way by hand, but I can just simply add in a start date and write in days ahead. This is 3 years and will be maintained. I can even add a fiscal schedule. I'm going to stagger this just like TimeXtender or Microsoft, starting Q1 in July. Great. Let's pull this to the top. Okay, so we basically got the data. Now we need to do some relation work. So let's look at this. Time check. All right, we're doing fine. So when I'm going to relate these things, the very first thing that I want to do, whether I'm going to only bring in one lookup field or multiple, is to set that relationship up. The benefit to this is that rather than creating a specific relationship between the field in the source and the target tables, I'm actually able to kind of curate that for the entire relationship and just use that default relationship. So here, let's do product model ID to product model ID. Again, it's going to create that relationship for me. I'm not coding any of this stuff. And again, that's why I'm able to go so fast. I want to bring in name, but I'm actually just going to use this interface to be a little bit more specific, because if you'll notice, I do already have a name field in this target table. All right, product model name. So I'm going to change that before I bring it in. Great. It's going to use that default relationship like I just said. All right, we're done with product. Let's move on to person and customer. So I really need that full name, like I mentioned. I can relate it with customer ID later. I'll worry about that in a minute. But I don't see a single field here for the full name. So let's go ahead and create that. Add a field. Full name, 50 characters should be enough. And then we're going to create a custom transformation. Now, I'm not going to write this concat statement, but it's basically the same idea. So I can do first name plus single quote open plus, and then just use IntelliSense to make my life easy. Anything that's in this this right side is going to be available to me, and I'm able to just keep moving. All right, great. So now we can bring in full name to customer. Oops, I forgot my first step, didn't I? All right, so business entity ID is actually going to relate to person ID in this case. I'll do that before I bring in the lookup, like I said. There we go. We're just using that default relationship again. Okay, next things up, let's work with our sales transactions. We have the sales order detail table, and we've got a bunch of stuff here in this dimension table, sales order header. Let's go ahead and bring some of that in. Again, we're going to start by relating these two tables. Sales order ID, great. I can see that relationship pop up here. And let's figure out what we want to bring in. So as I think about building a data warehouse, date is obviously a very important piece. Let's go ahead and bring this in. Due date as well. Maybe I want to look at kind of the two sides of the coin for fulfillment. Customer ID, like I mentioned, great. And I'm not going to show it in this dashboard, but let's assume that I would want to look at sales performance, maybe per sales individual. So I've got those different fields, doing great. I see line item here, but I know for a fact that that actually takes into account discounts. So let's create a gross line total, which basically is just a simple calculation. All right, so once again, I'm going to add that field. Let's provide a name. So simple numeric, no problem. And let's create that calculation. Again, I'm not writing SQL code to do this. I'm just going to use what's in there. So let's say unit price times great. All right, let's keep it tidy. There we go. Time check. Oof, 8 minutes. Okay, better hurry up. Okay, so we've got these lookups. I do need to relate this because it's at the center of that star schema like I talked about. So let's go ahead and just start from the top. Open this up in a separate window. And I'm going to relate this date value to both order date and due date. Now I'm breaking the paradigm of what I told you earlier because the way that I'm doing this is at the center of my star schema. Each time I drag this directly to a field, it's going to give me a new way that I'm relating. Now keep that in mind when we talk about our semantic model, because it will be important. This is really where I'm creating those relationships for this to be the center of the star. Okay, so this product window. Okay, product ID, I can see it here. Great, let's relate those two things. Yep. Let's look at customer. All right, we added that as a lookup, so that'll work. All right, so I think we are good. We've related this. We're ready to create our semantic model. So let's create sales. Okay. While I'm at it, I'm going to create that Power BI endpoint, this analysis services tabular. Just going to provide a name. Let's call it sales. Server, of course, we know I'm working on the prem, but this could easily be the cloud. Okay, database here, I'm just going to provide a name. Let's do sales and today's date. Right, and it does create that automatically for me, so we can see I'm able to connect. Great, no problem. Expand it. So let's start creating this data mart. What I'm going to do first is create the order date and due date. These are going to look exactly the same, but I'm going to bring it in twice because in the dashboard and analytics in general, I may have different uses for those, right? All right, so date value here, we're able to see there's a ton of stuff. Again, this is all maintained by TimeXtender, so it's going to make it super easy. Let's do month name, year name, and quarter name. There we go. All right, we can see that table coming here. I'm going to do it one more time for due date, same idea. All right, date value, display date, month name, year name, year quarter name. Now, when I start bringing in some of these other dimensions, I could be a little bit picky. So I'm not going to bring in everything, just what I think is applicable to the dashboard I have in mind. Product ID, that's fine. Name, I'd like that to be more specific. I don't have to change it in the MDW. I'm actually going to change that here. So I can just edit that very quickly. Again, these are some of the things that just make it so easy for me to model. If we want to talk about version control, obviously that's not going to be a part of Power BI. You kind of make those changes to your Power BI dashboard in Power BI directly. But here I would be able to roll back. If I do more development next week and I don't like it, this is how I'm able to really maintain that. So I not only have documentation as a part of this, but also this is just kind of the broader, easier way of doing things, I would say. All right, we'll bring in customers as well, same idea. Here's that key, right? Full name. All right. Now it's going to think like, hey, I need to relate this somehow. I don't see anything here. I'm going to worry about that in a second. So I'm just going to stay with none. And we'll bring in basically our sales transactions. I'm going to rename that to. Right. And we'll just see, I'm only going to bring in 4 different fields, but something cool is going to happen. So when I pull this in, it's going to allow me to create what those relationships are. I declared those basically in my MDW, but it's also going to do something cool when I click OK. It's going to bring in those relations as hidden fields. So I'm not going to see it in my dashboard necessarily, right? But I do have access to those because it is still creating that star schema for me. All right, time check. Okay, 12 minutes. We're doing okay. Let's create a couple measures really quickly. Let's see, gross line total. And of course, this is a currency. So let's switch it to US dollars. Great. And I'm going to hide this just to make it explicit that it is an aggregate. Let's rename this to sales amount. And same idea. All right, we're coming down to the wire here. I'm getting nervous. Let's see. Okay. Now, let's hide that. We can see those measures here. Okay. So 13 minutes, we might just make it. I don't know, we'll see. So before I deploy and execute, push these changes, we're basically ready to go, but I do want to optimize my execution. So if I do this, I can actually bump up the number of threads that will push this through. I'm also going to optimize by execution time. What that's going to do is allow me to have the fastest possible execution where everything finishes basically in the same time. All right, let's close that. We're going to deploy and execute. It's going to do three things. One, it's going to allow me to provide a developer's note, which is great if I want to roll back. Now it's going through deployment. It's just writing those T-SQL scripts, using metadata. It's creating the empty tables. It's going through a lot of these different data cleansing procedures. Upon execution, which we'll see here in just a moment, this is parallelizing running those scripts, filling those tables with data. This is creating our models. This is making that endpoint available to Power BI. Let's do time check. Oh man, it's going to be really close. Okay, I think we could do it though. All right, so we're coming up on 100%. What that means is we're going to switch over into Power BI. Let's connect to some data. So I've got that analysis services here. Again, I am running this locally. I know the name of my sales. Let's see. It's not 2010. Let's edit that. Man, I'm going to lose my time here. 2006. Okay. All right, so we can see these 5 tables popping up. Gosh, okay, it's really close. Chart, I'm going to pull in full name here to the access, sales line amount to the values. All right, and I am going to stop the clock with an honest 4 seconds left. Now I'm going to fix this up just a little bit. Let's make this a little bit bigger. But the idea is that we wanted sales amount and the name. Let's make that name a little bigger. I don't know about you, but my eyes are getting worse by the day. All right, so that was a lot. I'm going to take a sec here to breathe, take a sip of coffee. Let's take a look at some data lineage and documentation next. All right. So we accomplished a lot. Like I said, we are running through that data lake to data warehouse, create that data mart, pull that data in. One other cool thing actually that I should show you while I'm here in Power BI is that star schema, right? So it's cool to talk about, but it's even cooler to see. So we've got this date dimensions. We can see everything is already related. Again, this is version controlled. So anything that I'm doing with these dimensions further, maybe I want it up here. We can really see all of these things are flowing through. And this just saves me a ton of time. If I want to think about, again, rolling back or pushing out changes, multiple environments, I'm running this through prod and I'm trying to compare. I could do the same process at any of those steps. Now, let's say I'm trying to remember what I did last week on this. We're pushing a bunch of projects at the same time because it is so easy. I'm trying to figure out, where did this come from? I know this was a calculation I made, but what was it? Data lineage is available to any of the objects in TimeXtender, right? Any of your fields, any of your tables, any of that cool stuff. So we can see sales amount, sum, decimal. It's coming from this semantic model, sales, from MDW. Okay, that's cool. What about this calculation? We actually see that. Yeah, of course, that's a true question. So we can see here this transformation going all the way back to the source, right? This is flowing through as a decimal type from the semantic model, MDW. That's where the transform is. And we can see these all the way back to the ODX, unit price, order quantity. There we go. All right, now what if we're really trying to focus on the full documentation? This is really cool. So in 15 minutes, if I would have told you I was going to create a data warehouse and documentation, you would have been like, all right, come on, buddy. Like, no, you're not. But the reality is it's included, right? I'm kind of cheating here because TimeXtender just automatically does that. So let me pull this over on screen. And we can see this hyperlink. So everything you saw, I started brand new project. Everything is created for me. You can go to that sales order detail and see my fields, see some basic relationship stuff. We can look at specifically using that metadata to create this fully hyperlinked documentation. Let's see if we've got the transformation below. And of course we do. Gross line total, unit price, order quantity. So you can see in 15 minutes, I can just accomplish a ton of different stuff. We did the managed execution. We looked at data lineage, documentation. I created that end-to-end, pulling it through into Power BI, even creating that star scheme. So with that, I know I've thrown a lot at you. I wonder if there are any questions here in the chat. Joseph, what do we have?
Awesome. I just want to say great job, Taylor. You beat the clock. So incredible work there. And it's just so cool to see, the speed at which you can work in TimeXtender. I mean, whether you have just a light reporting need or you want to build up your full data warehouse, it's just going to be just as fast, it seems. And the nice thing is you can build your data warehouse with light reporting and another need, and as you build on, you're essentially building up this incredible data warehouse that's just going to be maintained and orchestrated there for you. So that's incredible.